Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
So you're a couple years out of dental school, and you're sitting at close to $500,000 in debt. You're making $120,000, maybe $150,000 a year working for a DSO, and you hate it. This is not what you signed up for. You never thought that being a dentist would feel like a dead-end job. If this is you, or some version of you, maybe you've been out a little longer, maybe your debt is more or less, the real question is, what do you do next? What's the real solution? And what about if this isn't you? You're an established doc, let's say, with minimal debt running your own practice. Well, chances are you know some younger doctors in this very situation that I'm describing. The reason I say that is right now, we're facing a generational crossroads in the dental profession, and it's smart for every dentist to know what's going on. If we want dentistry to look anything like it once was or what it should be, then all of us, everybody in the profession, is going to have to kick in. These younger doctors need a helping hand. One of them might be your associate someday. They might even be the one who buys your practice when you retire. So it helps if we're all on the same page when it comes to what's best for the future of patient-centric private dentistry. Now, if you're familiar with this show or our company, MGE, you know I've done a number of episodes on what's happening in the profession. I did a big one last week called What's Happening in the Dental Industry. Pretty original title, right? In 2025. In a nutshell, and this is what kind of got me onto this episode, the number of younger dentists becoming practice owners right now is at an all-time low. To give you an idea, back in 2005, 25% of dentists under 30 owned their own practice. That is now 8.8% in 2023. It's 2025. The last numbers we have is 23. Okay. Back in 2005, over 50% of doctors 30 to 34 years old owned a practice. That number is now less than a third. So younger doctors are not buying practices. Instead, many end up jumping into DSOs only to regret it later. So what's driving this issue? I mean, number one, they're buried in debt, unlike prior generations were, maybe $300,000, $500,000, depending on the school they went to. DSOs offer a guaranteed $120,000, $150,000 a year, plus benefits and incentives. And number two, who do you think is marketing to these younger doctors in dental school? It's not private practice owners, it's DSOs. So while the average dentist has always faced the, I know how to be a dentist, but don't know how to run a business dilemma, which is why companies like us exist, these younger doctors now have that same problem, plus a crushing debt load, and many are apathetic about ever paying it off. So for this episode, I am addressing the younger doctor specifically, but I advise even if you're an established doc, listen to this because this has something to do with you. I'm not just trying to get you to listen. You've already listened if you're already on here. But this has something to do with you, and it's important that we're all thinking on the same page here. But I'm going to be talking to younger doctors, and I want to talk about real success, the kind that you imagine when you applied to dental school, specifically defined by two things. One, how to pay off that debt before you retire. And two, the path to practice ownership before you're 50 years old, okay? Maybe even in the next couple years. My name is Jeff Blumberg, and I'm your host. And I think the best place to start is let's clearly define the problem that the younger doctor today is facing and how it compares to prior generations. I've been seeing it build for a while. And most of my career has been focused on more established practice owners. But I pulled up the numbers recently because you hear stuff over the years, and it's a lot worse than I thought it was. So let's compare a couple of different time periods. I'm going to compare the last roughly 40 years. I'm going back to 1985. I remember that year. And I'm looking at every 10 years from there. So what happened in 85, 95, 2005, 15, and 2025. So in 1985, the average dental school graduate had roughly $30,000 in student debt. In 1985. That was the average. Some had more, some had less, but the average was $30,000. The average salary for a dentist in 1985, and this This could be a dentist in private practice. It could be an associate. But the average salary for a dentist in 1985 was $90,000 a year. So $30,000 in debt, $90,000 a year in salary. In other words, their debt was 1/3 of their yearly salary, the average salary. So that's not bad, right? By 95, this starts to change a little bit. The average debt a graduate had was about $85,000. The average salary, about $120,000. But we're still at less than 1 year's salary in debt. So $85,000 debt, $120,000 in salary. Not completely unmanageable. By 2005, this crosses. The average graduate has about $160,000 in debt, and the average salary is about $140,000. So we're a little bit over 1 year's salary in debt. Still not terrible. Where you see it to really start to ramp up is 2015. The average student debt by 2015 for a dental graduate was $275,000. The average salary was $155,000. So now we're at almost 2 times a year's salary. By 2025 now, the average debt, there are different numbers. I looked at like 14 to 20 sources on this, different, college websites, student websites, ADA, etc. The average debt is anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 for a dental school graduate. Of course, depending on the school they went to, it could be more, right? The average salary is anywhere from $160,000 to $180,000. That's just for a dentist, period. This might not be for a new grad. But compare those two numbers. If your debt is, $350,000 and your salary is $160,000, your debt is more than 2 times your yearly salary. Compare that to somebody back in 1985 who had walked out with debt that was about 1/3 of their average yearly salary. So the debt that the average dental school student is walking away with these days has gone 5 to 10x what it used to be. Okay. And so then if you're walking out in that situation, you're in a much different scenario than somebody who graduated in 85 with $30,000 in debt. They had a lot more leeway at that point. They could go associate for a little bit, then maybe buy a practice. I know a lot of guys who graduated in 85 went straight into private practice because they didn't have this huge debt thing hanging around their neck. This is a big deal. And by survey, this is when you're talking debt with a younger dentist, their primary area of concern is student debt. But I could understand if I have $500,000 in debt, I'm not going to walk out and go pay $500,000 for practice. Back in the day, people didn't do that all the time either because they maybe wanted to figure out, how does this practice thing work? I've just gone to school for it. I don't want to go drop a bunch of money on a practice and, make it not work. So I'll go associate somewhere for a while. So we got double trouble now because you got the student debt on top of that for the average young doc. So there's a lot of risk associated with this. They're being marketed to very heavily by DSOs. So a lot of them end up working for a DSO. So look, I get it. I understand. But the real question is, you look at some of these message boards or social media groups, there's this sort of common thread of, I hate it. I didn't realize it was going to be this way. This patient, you hear that and they have trouble dealing with patients, which is a whole other thing. But, I feel like I'm a debt slave, this, that, the other, right? So I was looking at this and I thought, if you're solving a problem, what tends to help is figuring out what would I do in this situation? Or what have I seen our successful clients do that have maybe come from this same background, younger doctor, tons of student debt, started as an associate and now own their own practice. How did they get themselves into a position where they were successful quickly so they didn't feel like they were paying their student debt off until the year 2050? So from that, I was able to distill it down to 3 basic things that you can do. And this may sound simplistic, but hear me out for a sec, okay? So let's say you're just out of school, or if I was just graduating dental school, where would my primary focus be? Well, I've just learned, I've got my degree, I've passed the boards, and I think this is a statement most people will accept. You take it with a grain of salt for whatever you think, right? But if you take a look at, let's say you've been practicing 10 years, you work a lot faster now than you worked when you first graduated. It's just the truth. Your ability to prep a crown, do a composite, do anything is better because you've done it more often. It's faster. Repetition, especially repeating the things the right way over and over again, speeds you up. So where would my focus be before I decided to worry about, because usually I've got this huge debt. What most people do is they get out of school, is they go and they get a job. I got to go to a job that's paying me a lot of money right now. So then they're under all this pressure because they feel like they have to produce, but they aren't at a point yet clinically where they can move at an adequate speed to be as successful as they want to be. So maybe that's not you. Maybe you're a prodigy and you just can zip. So great, then that's fine. But most doctors are going to speed up the longer and longer that they work and the better that they get. So with all that debt around your neck, you're walking out, going, oh my gosh, I got to go take this job. That's not where I would start. A lot of student loan programs, it depends on the program you're on. There are programs which are a percentage of your discretionary income. There are some that are just fixed monthly payment. There are some that are graduated monthly payments, that go up over time, almost like practice loans. I would put my focus for the first 1 to 3 years of my career on getting two things. First, I would want to know how to handle patients. And actually, first, I would want to get good clinically. And second, I'd want to learn how to handle patients. But when I say get good clinically, you've learned how to do what you got to do clinically. I'd want to get proficient and fast. Okay? I'd want to get proficient and fast. Every profession in the history of humanity that's required high levels of skill always required some degree of apprenticeship. Every profession, even master painters in the 17th century were surrounded by apprentices, okay? And I'm not trying to compare painting to healthcare, but you get the idea. And there are some residencies out there. Some are good. A lot of them really don't prepare somebody for private practice, just from what I've observed. Look, I'm not a dentist, but from what I've observed, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis doesn't necessarily prepare them for private practice. So I would be thinking about coming out of school, how do I get myself prepared for this so that I could be successful eventually in my own office? Well, my first area of focus would be becoming proficient clinically, meaning I'd have to work at an adequate speed, okay? And you want to be able to do it at an adequate speed while maintaining high quality. And people can get hung up on this to a degree. You just want it to be fast and make money. No. If I hire someone to build a brick wall and they're laying a brick every hour or 2 hours, that's not fast enough. My wall is going to take forever to build. If you're taking 4 hours to prep a single crown, the patient's going to be in excruciating pain in their jaw later, just keeping their mouth open, but that's too long. The economics of it don't work. So considering that most doctors can do it start to finish, including numbing the patient up and dismissing them with the temp within an hour. So you'd want to get yourself into a situation where you are good and you're fast with high quality. And the only way you're going to get yourself into that situation, ideally, is working with somebody who is already good and fast. Sure, I can take CE courses and things like this, but I want to be around somebody all the time who's sort of looking over my shoulder, almost like a mentor, making sure I'm getting good and fast. So I'm going to associate for a doctor. They know I'm a new grad. They're willing to work with me. I'm willing to listen to them. And you know what? I would do whatever they ask me to do. That's what I would do. They want me to do this. Assuming it's within my clinical, wheelhouse. But I need to be on call. I need to take an emergency call, or I take emergencies rather. I need to see the kids. I need to do a cleaning once in a while, whatever I got to do. I'm in a situation where I'm learning while I'm getting paid. Am I getting the big bucks? Maybe not, but I'm making probably enough to live. I'm probably barely supporting myself in student debt, but I'm getting good. I'm learning. I'm sharpening my skills. Because let me tell you, when you've prepped 200 crowns, it would be a lot better than after your first one. Okay, it's like this with anything, building a house or, building a crib for your kid. If you build 20 or 30 in a row, eventually it becomes old hat. Repetition the right way breeds success and speed. So that's where my focus would be. I would be getting good and fast clinically. I might take a couple of CE courses, not crazy exotic ones, unless I'm just like that clinically, but maybe I'd want to at least know how to place single implants, place implants, and I can do basic dentistry, restorative dentistry, crowns, etc. And I'm getting really good at these things so that I'm good and I'm fast. That would be where my focus would be for the first, I don't know, depending on how long it took me. Maybe I got that to where I need to be in a year. Maybe it takes me 3 years. That's where I'm living, and I'm working in an environment with a mentorship type situation where someone is working with me to help me get good, okay? Now, at the same time, I'm learning that. And I know, most people don't want to think about that. I just got out of school. Why do I have to learn anything else? Well, come on. That's how professions work, folks. You could walk out with a bachelor's and go work for Deloitte. They're not going to go, oh, you have a bachelor's. Here's your desk. Here's your office. You still have to learn everything that Deloitte does. It's a big consulting firm, right? That's how life works, right? So you're getting good clinically at the same time. And this is the other major complaint you see in a lot of these groups is I'd learn how to handle patients, because that's part of the success in being a dentist is not just being able to do dentistry. It's handling the person who that mouth belongs to, because A, you might run into problem people once in a while and they can be frustrating. And B, you can't do work that a patient doesn't accept. So I have to learn how to sell. So I'd learn how to get good clinically, while at the same time, this is the second thing I would do, and I'm working in a good environment, a non-toxic, preferably private environment, and I'm learning how to sell, because I won't do the work unless the patient accepts it. Okay, you can't produce what you don't sell. And this is where we have things like on DDS Success, we have basic sales training. I'll put a link to that on the episode webpage, as well as we have the MGE communication and sales seminars where we really get into it on how to communicate with patients effectively. And here's what I'd be willing to do. If you're an associate doctor, like a legit associate, not and you'll get what I mean here in a second. More than happy to give you some type of a discount on the monthly subscription. If it's just you're working for a DSO, you're hoping to go off on your own, email me. I'll put my email address at the bottom of the episode webpage. It's jeffb@mgeonline.com. I'm willing to give you a break on this. The reason I say this, you're a legit associate, is I've seen people who are like, have their own practice and they're trying to get the associate discount. I just think that's not cool. Anyway, but the point being, if you can't sell it, you can't produce it. And, any office you're going to work for is going to want some form of a production goal on a given month. So let's say I go to work for a practice, they're going to want me to produce at least $40,000 a month. Now, someone could say, oh, well, you just focused on the money. No, there are economic realities. If they have to pay me and they're paying me $12,000, $13,000 a month, I have to bring something to the table. Otherwise, what's the point of having me there? And I want to be very clear here. I have no issue with production goals or targets. That's fine by me, because the truth is, if you have a decent flow of patients that you are seeing, whether your schedule is being populated by the senior doctor or you're having to sell your own treatment, if you're seeing patients in hygiene or new patients, you're going to see tons of work that you don't close, especially in the beginning. So, the average practice has $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of dentistry walking in it every day if they have an adequate hygiene and new patient flow coming into the practice that they're just not closing. Okay. So there's plenty of work to do there. So if I go work somewhere and they tell me, Jeff, you need to do $40,000 a month, and I'm seeing all these patients who need dentistry and I can close it, well, I should be able to do $40,000 a month. I probably could do more than that. And this is assuming that it's needed dentistry. I mean, think about this for a second. If a patient needs a root canal and 3 crowns, is it better that they do it than they not do it? Of course it's better that they do it. It's better for them, their oral health, their overall systemic health. It also happens to be better for the practice and better for me as the doctor. It's actually a true win-win. I have no problem with that. That's fine. I do have a problem with diagnostic quotas, meaning I've seen situations primarily in corporate environments where you'll have doctors given a you have to diagnose X amount of crowns today, 2740 or 50. You have to diagnose 4 crowns today. Well, I don't know how that would even be possible. That is where you start to see malpractice, in my opinion, start to creep in. Again, I'm not a doctor and I'm saying that, but I mean, that just 2 brain cells to rub together. You can see that. In order to diagnose 4 crowns, I need to see 4 patients or maybe at least 1 patient who needs validly 4 crowns. What if I don't? What if all that's on my schedule today are younger people? I'm not going to see 4 crowns. Not going to work. So that's not cool. So production quotas, fine, or targets, fine. Diagnostic quotas or targets, not fine. And, there's economic realities, so it should be able to work. It shouldn't be a problem. So the point being is, if you can operate at a decent speed, okay, you're working in a non-toxic environment, preferably in a mentorship type situation, while you're also learning to sell, you then become quite an unstoppable force. You're a force to be reckoned with, because then you can walk into a situation, you can get a patient to want the treatment they need, and then you can do it. Okay? I've seen doctors in that situation who can do just basic dentistry, maybe place single implants, and they earn $300,000, $350,000 a year as an associate. Which brings me to this last point. Whether it's in that environment you start in, which is where I would hope it would be, especially in a private environment, there needs to be some upside to the job that you have. If you're learning to sell and learning to produce, there has to be some upside. It can't just be a fixed salary. Like, let's say I'm in a situation where I'm going to earn 30% of what I produce, and I can sell and I can produce most things. Maybe I can't do big cases. I can't do FMRs or all-on-X cases, but I can place a couple implants. I can do crowns. I can do molar endo. I can do all this stuff, right? Okay, cool. Well, you put me in that situation and I can sell. I should have no problem doing, I produce at least 70, 80,000 a month, most likely. If I'm getting paid 30% of what I produce, I'm earning then at that point, $300,000 a year roughly, maybe more some months I'm doing better, some months less, but I'm earning a decent living. At that point, even just as an associate doctor, and I could get myself to that point in 1 to 3 years, depending on my skill set to begin with. At that point, I'm paying off my student debt in just a few years because now I have excess income, you see? So that's the real trick. I mean, it's not really rocket science. If you want to get out of debt, you have to make money. How are you going to make money? By being able to deliver dentistry effectively at a decent, adequate clip and being able to sell said dentistry so patients actually want to do it. Then you will make more money as a doctor. I mean, again, this isn't hugely revelatory, but that would be where my focus would be. Not, I have to go get a job so I make 160, 170 a year right now. I really have nobody looking over my shoulder who gives a hoot whether I'm doing good or not. That's not the situation I want to put myself in because these are the formative years that are going to pretty much determine the next 20, 30 years I have in the profession. This is where I'm getting ready, loading up to really blast off into the future. So once I've put myself in that situation, I'm now a productive associate, I'm earning well, I can sell, I can deliver, I'm in a great environment, say within the next 1 to 3 years. Now what? Well, paying off my debt, no problem, because I'm making plenty of money. Well, now I've got a number of possibilities open to me. I can stay an associate doctor, cool, and just earn money. Because here's the beauty of it. Let's say the environment I'm in, the doctor sells the practice to corporate and I don't want to stay. I can go get a job somewhere else and make that kind of money, no problem, because I have the skills, okay? Or maybe it just doesn't work out between me and the owner doc. I can go somewhere else, okay? Not a problem. I have those skills. I have that ability. So I could stay an associate, or maybe I do get along with this owner doctor. Maybe they want me to come in as a partner. Great. There's a path for me to future ownership, and we have a good working relationship. This is cool. Or this is something I brought up a lot in last week's episode. In a nutshell, because of the way dentist demographics are right now, specifically age in the United States, I'd say not just to get a click or a listen to last week's episode if you want the full breakdown. It came with a slideshow, if that tells you anything. Over the next 10 years, we're going to have a huge demographic shift in dentistry. We're going to have a lot of dentists retiring, and then we'll have some newer ones coming in. Dental schools, rather, are producing more doctors right now. But the problem is younger docs don't own practices, okay? I mentioned that earlier in the episode. Most of over 40% of the practices in the United States are owned by doctors 55 and over. So the way this is going to work is as these doctors retire, some of their practices will be bought. Some will be bought by DSOs, but DSOs have very specific targets. They're going to be looking for bigger offices. The majority of them, I estimate anywhere from 20 to 30,000 of these dental practices in the U.S. are just going to disappear. They're going to vanish. I was calling them orphan practices because they're not DSO targets and younger doctors aren't buying. This is one of the reasons I'm doing this episode this week, folks, because you might want to go out on your own at that point. 3 years later, okay, you still got $300,000 in student debt. Ownership may be a possibility, or maybe partnership with the person that you're working for. You can partner together and buy a practice, maybe buy a couple practices if you have a really good relationship with this person who's been mentoring you. I'm all for that as well. But the point being is, there's a seller and a buyer's market, right? What's a buyer's market? A buyer's market is where prices are cheap. Usually when you see a buyer's market, let's say in real estate, that's because there's a lot of house inventory out there and not a lot of people are buying. So then you have a little bit more of an advantage as the buyer. Then there's a seller's market where the housing market's hot. Houses go like this the second they're put on the market. So it jacks the prices up, right? This is going to be a buyer's market for practices. So what kind of practice are you looking for? Well, you're looking for something small that you can scale. I'd want at least 4, maybe 5 chairs, even if it's plumbed for 4 or 5 with only 3, that works for me too. It might be a little beat up. It might be old. There might be shag carpet. There might be pink Formica countertops. It really does not matter to me. I'm going to buy it, but I'm going to get that practice for $250,000 or $300,000. So if I still have $300,000 in student debt and I buy a practice for $300,000, it's still, we haven't hit the $1 million mark yet. So I'm still feeling good, but I can sell and I can do great dentistry. Well, now, even with no other skills, at least I'm of course going to have all the staff headaches and marketing and all that. That's why companies like us exist. Call us at that point, folks. Not a problem. But you can get that place going and you're doing 50, 60, 70,000 a month, no problem. It really isn't that big of a deal. This is the model our clients use. They'll pick up a small place, scale it. Had a client here a week or two ago. They bought a place for 300. The place is doing 600 a month now. They bought it for 300 period, and it does 600 a month. Another client bought a practice for 600. It did 3-something million last year. You scale. That's what companies like us exist for. I mean, we're the best at it, but whatever. But do not go buy the $1 million practice. Don't go competing with DSOs for your first office. Buy cheap. Buy something cheap. Buy something simple. You might have to put a couple bucks into decor and equipment. Paint is cheap. Carpet isn't that expensive. It's a hell of a lot less expensive than dental chairs. And then you're set. So you have those paths open to you at that point. You can stay an associate. You can come on as a partner in the practice you're associating in. You can go off on your own into your own practice. You could partner up with the guy or girl that you're working for now and buy second locations. And there is going to be more upside as an owner. Sure, you can earn $300-400 as an associate. I mean, some specialized associates earn more, but as an owner, that's where you can earn $5, $6, $7, $1 million a year. Okay. Anyway, so that's sort of the actions. If I found myself in that situation, I'm just out of dental school, or I just passed my boards or whatever, what am I going to do? That's where I would go. I wouldn't freak out and go, I have to make money right now. I mean, I know you do have to make money, and you're going to get a job. That isn't the problem, but maybe it's not the perfect job where you have all these bennies paying your student loans, but you're getting a job that's actually going to prepare you for long-term success in the profession. That's the route I would take. Take it for what you will there, right? But, and I hope it doesn't sound too simplistic. It's easy to explain something in 30 minutes or less or more. I don't know how long this episode is. That will take years to achieve, but that doesn't make it any less worthwhile. And like I said, as a younger doctor in this environment, I truly feel for you. I really do. I think it's a little messed up, the situation you're in, but we are where we are. The question is, what do you do now? The fact that we think it's a little unfair or whatever, it doesn't really change the fact that you still got all that debt. The question is, what do you do now? You can change your circumstances here and have it all come out the way you hoped for originally. That's what I would recommend that you do. And look, here's what I'd recommend. If you have questions or you need help, or let's say you're an associate and you're looking for, hey, I want to put myself in this kind of environment, email me. I've done that before. I've had numerous associates email me here at the podcast, and I've hooked them up with other clients that might have a working environment for them. If you're looking for an associate and you want to provide this type of an environment, email me. Happy to help. We are developing sort of a mentorship/job board where we can connect doctors like this up. I don't have it ready yet, and I didn't want to hold this episode for it. Anyway, so there you have it. I truly think that if we just put our shoulder to the wheel here, we can make a difference, not just for the new doctors, but for the profession as a whole. Hopefully we can take these practices that are projected to disappear and turn these into private practices, which I think would be great. Be good for the profession. It'd be good for the patients. That's all I have for you this week. I do hope this helps. I have those links on the episode webpage that I mentioned. If you have any questions about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and I will see you at the next episode.